Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you a comparison video today between the synthetic Puma evoPOWER 1 and the leather evoPOWER 1. These are two shoes that are actually very different from each other, and in today's video we're going to discuss what those major differences are when it comes to fit, feel, and of course general performance. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. The biggest difference between the synthetic and leather evoPOWER 1 is definitely the touch that they provide. Starting off with the synthetic evoPOWER, it features an Adapt Light one-way stretch microfiber material. Now it's one-way stretch, meaning that it's going to be laterally supportive when you are making these hard cuts, but vertically it has the ability to stretch ever so slightly. It's definitely something that you can't really see, but it's noticeable when you put the shoes on, and it has to do with the natural range of motion approach that this shoe is trying to provide, and it does that quite well, and I'll talk about that later in the video. You can see it's a relatively thin synthetic material, and what's great is that it has a nice natural kind of plushness about it. Hard to describe, you guys can see it a little bit in the video, and it's of course backed by AccuFoam padding, which is essentially a thin spongy layer of memory foam that runs through in these little strips through the strike area as well as the top of the forefoot. So for the most part, it kind of has that best of both worlds type of feel, and that it's thin, so it provides somewhat of a barefoot sensation, but at the same time it's very plush, and you have that additional padding from the AccuFoam that gives it a slight leather-like sensation. It really doesn't compare to anything out there on the market in terms of touch, but in terms of overall feel when they're on your feet, I would say that it reminds me most of something like Nike Skin. As far as grip is concerned, it's a fairly smooth finish, so you're not going to have any additional grip, and again, it's a very natural feeling shoe and one of my personal favorite synthetics currently out there on the market. It really is that good. The best synthetic shoe that Puma has ever put out, if you ask me. Now, moving on to the leather upper variation, this one is a lot less kind of out there as far as feel is concerned. I would say it reminds me very much of something like the Adidas 11 Pro 2 in that it has that same calfskin leather, and the quality of the calfskin is pretty decent on this shoe, I must admit, and that in combination with your AccuFoam pads, just like you're going to find in the synthetic variation, in pretty much all the same spots, so through the strike zone and across the top of the forefoot. Now the leather on its own is relatively thick, it's not a thin leather by any means, and then with the addition of the thickness to the AccuFoam, it makes for a very, very plush, very soft cushion feel when making touches on the ball. Some might even say that this is a fairly bulky shoe, and it's not a bad thing. It doesn't take away from the overall feel, but if you're looking for something that is extremely padded as far as touch on the ball is concerned, this is definitely a great option. Also a great option for somebody looking for a good amount of protection across the entire front area of the foot. If you've seen any of the marketing for the evoPOWER 1, then you know that Puma has made it very clear that the evoPOWER 1 was designed around striking the ball, which is kind of why I was surprised by the release of the leather variation, because if you look at all of the marketing information that was given out for the synthetic variation, which obviously came out first, a lot of the features that are on this shoe just can't be there on the leather variation due to the material itself. Now, if you don't know, there are several elements to this shoe that allow it to be as flexible as possible, which in turn is supposed to result in more power in your shot. Please keep in mind that neither of these two shoes will make your shot more powerful, at least to the point where you're going to notice it or other people will notice it. It's just like any pair of shoes. If you shoot the ball well, you shoot the ball well in most shoes. So, as far as the evoPOWER 1 is concerned, like I mentioned, it's designed around having that natural flexibility in your foot, which is supposed to allow for an increase in power to your shot. One of those features you're going to find on this shoe is that one-way stretch Adapt Light synthetic. It is very noticeable when you put the shoes on your feet. It's extremely soft and it moves very naturally with the flex of your foot, whether it's this way or this way. Now, as far as the shoe flexing backwards, that's normally something you don't see a lot in most sole plates. They generally tend to be a little bit stiffer, so they don't do that at all. But again, Puma has more or less engineered the shoe to be as flexible as possible, especially in the forefoot area. So again, it has that ability to flex back, and when you combine that with the one-way stretch synthetic, it's something that is quite noticeable when you actually start striking the ball around in the evoPOWER 1. Now, with the leather upper variation, it's leather, so it doesn't have that one-way stretchability. It's definitely soft, it's definitely flexible, and when you pull the shoe back, it definitely still will flex. It's got the exact same sole plate, but when you're wearing this shoe, it doesn't have that same ultra natural, ultra flexible feel that you get from the synthetic variation. And for that reason, I would say that striking the ball is far superior in the standard evoPOWER 1 versus the leather one, whereas the leather variation to me feels more like a standard pair of leather soccer cleats. So again, if you're looking for the ultimate evoPOWER 1 experience as far as striking the ball is concerned, the synthetic upper variation is definitely the way to go. As far as traction is concerned, both the synthetic and leather evoPOWER 1s feature the exact same sole plate and stud patterns, so in terms of overall traction, they're going to feel pretty much identical. It's one of those stud patterns that I would say is loosely based off of what you're going to find from their Evo Speed line, their Speed Boot line, if you will, in that it does have these kind of very similar, very narrow profile conical studs that penetrate the ground quite well, but it's of course backed up by these bladed studs, which provide a little bit more stability, a little bit more stopping power when you are making those hard lateral cuts. And for the most part, it's one of my personal favorite firm ground stud patterns currently on the market. You get a nice blend of grip at push-off, plenty of maneuverability when you're on your toes, and it also feels very solid when you're planting to strike the ball. So for the most part, a great stud pattern. Again, it really doesn't matter whether you go for the synthetic or leather upper variation because they are, of course, identical. As far as weight is concerned, both of these shoes are honestly very similar. So for the sake of comparison, I'm going to weigh both shoes for you today in real time. Keep in mind that both shoes are a size 9.5 US and they are both used pairs. So we'll start off with the synthetic evoPOWER 1, throw it on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.45 ounces. Pretty light. So we'll take that off, we'll throw on the leather upper variation, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.9 ounces. So there's a 0.45 ounce difference between both of these two shoes. This is something that is more or less insignificant in my opinion. It's not something you're going to notice on feet. It's not something you're going to notice while you're holding them in your hands. And for the most part, weight should not be the deciding factor if you're trying to pick between the synthetic and the leather evoPOWER 1. Alright, here's a look at both the synthetic and leather evoPOWER 1s on feet. In terms of overall comfort, I would say that both of these shoes are very comfortable, but at the same time they both feel very different. Starting off with the synthetic evoPOWER 1, it's very flexible on feet, noticeably more than any other shoe that I've personally ever worn, and the Adapt-Lite synthetic really is great in terms of overall fit and comfort. It does have that one-way stretchability, which is very noticeable when you put these on. It wraps your foot nicely. There's pretty much no extra space on the inside of the shoe if you get the proper sizing. And for the most part, it's just a really, really comfortable thin synthetic shoe. Two things that honestly don't go hand in hand most of the time, and for that reason, again, I would say it reminds me a lot of the Nike Hypervenom Phantom, being that Nike skin is also very thin, very soft, and very natural feeling on your foot in terms of overall flexibility. As far as width is concerned, I would say that it's a little bit wider than average for a thin synthetic shoe, but certainly not an overly wide boot by any means. And as long as you don't have excessively wide feet, these should fit you just fine. Please keep in mind though that this is still a synthetic material, so in terms of stretching, you're really not going to get much stretch out of the shoe in the width whatsoever. Moving on to the leather evoPOWER 1, this feels more or less like a standard leather shoe. So of course, they're very, very comfortable, but definitely don't feel as flexible or as natural on your feet, in my opinion. With that being said, it's still, like I said, a very comfortable shoe. Give it a couple hours of break-in time, the leather will break in quite nicely, and you will get that nice stretch in the width, allowing for a very custom fit. They both, of course, have that kind of anatomical shaping in the toe, so for the most part, it fits quite nicely even at the front of the shoe. Again, pending that you get the right size, which is very, very important. And in terms of width, it's pretty much the exact same shape on the last, but because it is leather, you will get that extra bit of stretch from the leather material itself in the width. So if you have wider feet, the leather upper variation definitely is the better option in my opinion. As far as sizing is concerned, normally I would wear a size 9 US. In both of these shoes, I found that going half a size up was pretty much necessary. So I'm wearing a 9.5 in both the synthetic and leather, and the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair of either of these two shoes for yourself, I would strongly recommend going half a size up. Alright guys, that's it for my comparison between the synthetic and leather evoPOWER 1. This is one of those situations that is very similar to that of the synthetic and leather F50 Adizeros from Adidas, where they're the same shoe technically because they have the same sprint frame base, but they're actually very different in terms of how they feel and perform. The same goes for the leather and synthetic evoPOWER 1. If you want something that is more of a modern, more of an innovative type of design in my opinion, the synthetic evoPOWER 1 is definitely the way to go. Provides more of a barefoot feel, and if you really want that ultra flexible, ultra natural feel on your foot, this is definitely the better option. Whereas if you want a lot of those evoPOWER 1 elements like the AccuFoam, like the sole plate and stud pattern that is of course very thin and flexible, but still want to maintain more of a natural kind of familiar type of feel, then the leather evoPOWER 1 is also a really good option. Don't get me wrong, these are both great shoes. As far as which one is my personal favorite, to me by far I prefer the standard evoPOWER 1 with the synthetic upper variation. To me it's just a very comfortable shoe. I like the weight range that it falls into, and the natural softness of the synthetic upper to me is just something that I find very attractive and enjoy a lot from this particular shoe. So that's pretty much it for my comparison, guys. If you have any questions at all or suggestions even, be sure to leave those down below in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video as well, be sure to support it with a like. Of course, if you would like more information on the overall performance of either of these two shoes, I will leave links in the description to the review pages on my website, where you won't only find the full written review, but you'll also find buy it now links with the best prices online, including exclusive SR4U coupon codes, allowing you to pick up both of these shoes at a slightly discounted price. So be sure to go ahead and check that out if you're planning on ordering. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all of my social media information down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.